I never expected a night's rest would lead to the most erotic and thrilling moments of my life due to my nephew. It all started after a long day at work, the kind of day that weighs heavy on your body, making every muscle ache and every thought feel sluggish. I'd gotten home late, too tired to even think about eating dinner. All I wanted to do was collapse into bed and let the world melt away for a few hours. The house was quiet, dark, except for the soft glow of the hallway light slipping under my bedroom door. I barely had the energy to change into something comfortable before I slipped under the sheets. The coolness of the bed welcomed me, and I let out a deep sigh. Closing my eyes, sleep came quickly, pulling me into that dreamless void where time seems to lose meaning. It must have been hours later when I felt it, a soft shift in the air, something that tugged at the edge of my awareness but didn't pull me fully awake. At first, I thought I was dreaming a faint presence in the room, a shadow of movement so subtle that my mind couldn't quite catch up to what was happening. I was half asleep, drifting in that space between reality and dream. And I barely registered the soft creak of the door as it opened, just a crack. But then something happened. I felt the weight shift on the bed beside me. The subtle pressure of someone sitting down, a light touch on my arm, warm and gentle, like a whisper of heat, brushing against my skin. It was so soft that I wasn't even sure it was real. My mind swirled with confusion, half dreaming, half aware as the warmth spread through me. My heart quickened. Though I wasn't quite sure why there was no fear, no alarm, just a deep sense of something unspoken lingering in the air between us. I didn't move. I didn't want to break the moment. Didn't want to acknowledge that maybe this wasn't a dream at all. And then I felt it. A hand, firm and steady, resting gently on my shoulder. The touch sent a jolt through my body, but I remained still, my breath shallow as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Was I imagining? This was it, just a trick of my tired mind. Slowly I cracked my eyes open, squinting against the dim light, filtering into the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced over, and there sitting beside me on the bed was my nephew eating. He was quiet, his expression unreadable as he looked down at me, his hand still resting on my shoulder. My breath caught in my throat. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Thick with the haze of sleep, John didn't move, didn't pull his hand away. His gaze was intense, his face partially shadowed in the darkness. But I could see the hint of something that made my stomach twist in ways I didn't quite understand. "Stand, I didn't mean to wake you," he said softly, his voice low and steady. I couldn't sleep. I nodded, unsure of what to say. There was something about the way he was looking at me, something about the quiet tension in the room that made it impossible to think straight. He had been staying with me for a few weeks now, helping out around the house, and while we'd always been close, this was different. "I didn't mean to come in like this," he continued, his hand slipping from my shoulder, but not moving far. "But I don't know. I just needed to be here with you." His words hung heavy in the air between us, and I felt my heart racing even faster. There was something unspoken, something simmering just beneath the surface that neither of us was willing to acknowledge, but the way he was looking at me, the way his body seemed to gravitate toward mine, it was impossible to ignore. I shifted slightly under the covers, the fabric rustling softly as I sat up a little, propping myself against the headboard. John's eyes followed my movements, his gaze steady, and for a moment we just sat there, in the quiet of the room, the weight of everything that wasn't being said pressing down on us. "I don't mind," I said softly, my voice finally breaking the silence. "It's okay if you needed to talk." John smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something else there, something deeper, something I hadn't seen before. He glanced down at his hands, fiddling with the edge of the blanket, his brow furrowed in thought. "I don't know what's going on with me," he admitted after a long pause. "I've been feeling things I don't understand, and I didn't know who else to talk to." His words sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt the tension between a spike. I wasn't sure what he meant, wasn't sure where this conversation was headed, but I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, could feel the unspoken emotions that hung heavy in the air between us. "John," I started, my voice cautious, unsure of how to proceed. "You can talk to me about anything." "You know," that he nodded, his hands still fidgeting with the blanket. "I know that's why I came in here, but now I don't know how to say what I need to say." I swallowed hard, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of the moment. There was something about the way he was looking at me, something about the way his voice had softened, that made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask him what was on his mind, wanted to push him to say what he was feeling. But there was a part of me that was afraid of the answer. John looked up at me, then his eyes searching mine for something, some kind of reassurance, some kind of understanding. "I've been thinking about you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "About us." My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. There was no mistaking the meaning behind his words, no mistaking the intensity in his gaze. This wasn't just a late-night conversation. This was something more, something deeper, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. "I don't know what that means," I whispered, though my voice betrayed the confusion, fear swirling inside me. John leaned closer, his hand brushing against mine, the contact sending a jolt of electricity through me. "It means I don't want to pretend anymore," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I don't want to act like I don't feel this, like we don't both feel it." But it didn't stop the silence that followed. John's words seemed to stretch on forever, heavy and thick. Filling the space between us, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, could feel the tensions building in my chest as I tried to process what he had just said. This was my nephew, someone I had known since he was a kid. And now he was sitting here, telling me things that I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. John's hand was still resting lightly on mine, his touch sending waves of heat through my skin, making it hard to think clearly. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and desire. The weight of what he was saying pressing down on me like a lead blanket. I wanted to pull away, wanted to distance myself from whatever this was. But at the same time, there was a part of me that couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him. I started, my voice shaky, unsure of how to respond. "John, this is complicated." He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I know it is," he said softly, his voice calm, despite the tension in the room, "but that doesn't make it any less real. I've tried to ignore it, tried to pretend like it was just in my head, but I can't anymore." I swallowed hard, my throat dry, as I tried to find the right words. This was dangerous territory, territory I had never expected to find myself in, and yet here we were, sitting in the dark, with emotions that had been simmering just below the surface for who knows how long. I don't know if we should. I trailed off my mind, racing. It's not something that can happen. John's hand tightened slightly on mine, his grip firm but gentle. Why not? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What's stopping us? Really, I couldn't answer. That there were a million reasons why this was wrong, why it shouldn't even be a thought in our heads, but none of them felt solid in the face of the connection. I could feel between us. I wanted to say it was because he was my nephew, because we were family, and that crossed every line imaginable. But the way he was looking at me, the intensity in his eyes, made all of those reasons feel flimsy. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, trying to keep my voice from trembling. John, we can't just ignore that you're my nephew. It's not that simple. He nodded again, his expression softening slightly. I know it's not simple, but that doesn't change the way I feel. My heart raced, and I felt a familiar warmth spread through me as his words sank in. There was something about the way he was speaking, something about the quiet determination in his voice that made it impossible to deny the truth of what he was saying. This wasn't just a fleeting feeling for him, it was real. I don't want to make things weird between us. I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't want to ruin our relationship. You won't, John said quickly, his hand moving to cup the side of my face, his thumb brushing lightly against my cheek. The touch was soft, gentle, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I don't want to ruin anything either. I just want to be honest with you. I want to stop pretending. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breathing, trying to make sense of the emotions swirling inside me. This was my nephew. But in this moment, he didn't feel like family. He felt like something more, something deeper, and the weight of that realization made my chest tighten. And it didn't end there. When I opened my eyes again, John was still watching me, his expression open and vulnerable. It was the vulnerability that did it the way. He was laying everything out there, not hiding, not pulling back. He was giving me the choice, letting me decide what happened next. And I didn't want to walk away without thinking. I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my chest. As I closed the distance between us, my lips brushed against his soft and tentative, and for a moment, everything else faded away. The world outside the room disappeared, leaving just the two of us in the quiet stillness of the night. John responded immediately, his hand slipping from my face to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, and I felt a rush of heat course through me as our bodies pressed together. It was overwhelming. The intensity of the moment, the way his touch made my skin tingle in ways I hadn't expected. We pulled apart, both of us breathing heavily, our foreheads resting against each other as we tried to catch our breath. My mind was spinning, my heart racing with the weight of what had just happened. I should have felt guilty, should have been overwhelmed with shame, but all I felt was a strange sense of relief, like we had finally let go of something that had been building between us for so long. I've wanted this for a while, John admitted softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know how to tell you. His words hit me like a freight train, and I felt a surge of emotion rise up inside me. This wasn't just a moment for him. It wasn't just a passing thought. He had been holding this in for longer than I had realized, and now that it was out in the open, there was no going back. I don't know what this means, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know where this goes. John smiled softly, his hand still resting on the back of my neck, his thumb brushing gently against my skin. We don't have to figure it all out right now, he said quietly. We can take it slow. We don't have to rush anything. His words brought a sense of calm that I hadn't expected. There was no pressure, no urgency, just the quiet understanding that we would figure this out together, one step at a time. I nodded, my heart still racing, as I tried to wrap my mind around everything that had just happened. This was new territory for both of us. And while it was complicated, it didn't feel wrong. It felt right. We sat there for a while, the silence between us comfortable. Now the weight of everything we hadn't said before finally lifted. John's hand slipped from my neck, but he didn't move far. He stayed close. His presence warm and steady beside me, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me in a way that I hadn't felt in years. Eventually, the quiet stretched into the early hours of the morning, and I knew we had to figure out what came next. But for now, it didn't matter. What mattered was that we had stopped pretending. We had stopped hiding, and whatever came next, we would face it together, but the story didn't end there. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. The weight of the previous night lingered in the air, a mixture of emotions that I still hadn't fully processed. I had barely slept, my mind replaying everything that had happened, everything that had been said. John had eventually gone back to his own room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But the tension between us was still there, quiet, but palpable, as I lay in bed, staring up at the SE, feeling I wondered what today would bring. Could we really pretend that nothing had changed? Could we go back to the way things were before I doubted it? The moment I'd kissed him, everything had shifted, and there was no undoing that. My heart raced at the thought of facing him this morning, at the thought of what he might say or how he might act. Would he regret it? I couldn't stay in bed forever. Eventually I got up, pulled on a shirt, and made my way downstairs. The house was quiet, and for a moment I'd thought maybe John had already left for the day, maybe gone to clear his head or get some space. But as I rounded the corner into the kitchen, there he was, sitting at the table, with a cup of coffee in hand, staring out the window. The sight of him made my stomach flip, and I had to remind myself to breathe. He looked up when he heard me enter, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence stretched out thick, with everything that had been left unsaid. "Morning," John said softly, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was something else there too, something that mirrored the nervous energy I was feeling. "Morning," I replied, my voice a little rough. I wasn't sure how to act now. Did we talk about it? Did we pretend everything was normal? The uncertainty weighed on me, and I wasn't sure how to navigate this new terrain between us. John gestured to the pot of coffee on the counter. "I made some thought. You could use it." I smiled, though it felt a little forced. "Thanks." I poured myself a cup and sat down at the table across from him. The awkwardness was thick in the air, but I could see that John was trying to keep things light, trying to make this morning feel as normal as possible, but we both knew it wasn't. After a few moments of quiet sipping, John cleared his throat, setting his cup down with a soft clink. "So about last night?" My heart skipped a beat at his words, and I swallowed hard, bracing myself for whatever was about to come next. "I don't want you to feel weird about it." He continued, his eyes searching mine. "I don't regret it, but I also don't want you to think that I'm expecting anything. You know more than what you're ready for." His words hung in the air between us, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I didn't know what I'd been expecting to say, but his honesty made everything feel a little easier to handle. He wasn't pushing me. He wasn't demanding anything. He was giving me the space to figure this out at my own pace. "I don't regret it either," I admitted softly, my voice barely above a whisper, but I'm still trying to make sense of it. John nodded, his expression understanding. I get that this is new for both of us. I took a deep, deep breath, my fingers curling around the mug in front of me. I don't know what this means, I said, echoing the thoughts that had been swirling in my mind all night. But I don't want to lose you, John. I don't want this to mess up our relationship. He leaned forward, his hand resting lightly on the table, his fingers brushing against mine. It won't, he said firmly. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. His words brought a sense of calm that I hadn't expected. It wasn't an easy situation, but it didn't have to be as complicated as I had made it in my mind. We didn't have to rush into anything. We could take it slow, figure out what this was, without putting pressure on ourselves. John's hand lingered near mine, and for a moment, I wanted to reach out to close the distance between us, like I had last night. But I held back, unsure if it was the right time instead. I smiled softly at him, grateful for his understanding, for his patience. So John said, after a moment, leaning back in his chair with a small grin, "Does this mean I get to take you out on a date?" I blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in tone, and then I couldn't help but laugh. It was exactly what I needed. Something light. Something that broke the tension. John's grin widened at my reaction, and I felt some of the weight lift from my chest. A date? I teased, raising an eyebrow. "You're serious?" He shrugged, his grin still in place. "Why not? It's what people do, right? They go on dates, get to know each other, and we could, see what happens." I shook my head, still smiling, but the idea didn't sound as ridiculous as I thought it might. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense if we were going to explore whatever this was between us, maybe taking things slow, like we would. If this were a normal relationship, was exactly what we needed. "Okay," I said, finally my heart racing with the decision, "let's do it a date." John's eyes lit up and I felt a rush of warmth at the sight of his excitement. "Really? Yeah, really," I replied, feeling more certain with each passing moment. "Let's take it slow. Figure this out." John reached across the table, his hand finally closing over mine, his grip firm but gentle. "I'm looking forward to it," he said, his voice soft but filled with meaning. My chest tightened with emotion as I looked at him, knowing that this was the beginning of something neither of us had expected, but something that felt right. We didn't have to rush. We didn't have to know all the answers. We just had to be here together and take things one step at a time. But there was more. As the days went on, things between us started to feel more natural, more comfortable. We fell into an easy rhythm. The tension that had once weighed so heavily between us now replaced with something quieter. More intimate, John and I spent more time together, talking, laughing, sharing meals, and every now and then there would be a soft touch, a lingering glance, a brush of hands that sent a jolt of electricity through me. But we didn't push it. We kept things slow, letting the moments unfold naturally without forcing anything. There was no urgency, no need to rush into something we weren't ready for, and in that space, in that slow unfolding of whatever was growing between us, I found a sense of peace that I hadn't expected one evening as we sat on the porch, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting everything in a warm, golden light. John reached over and took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. I looked over at him, my heart swelling with the quiet intensity of the moment. "We're doing this, aren't we?" I asked softly, my voice barely above a whisper. John smiled, his eyes soft, full of something deeper than words could express. "Yeah," he said, "we are." And for the first time, I felt certain that whatever this was, whatever came next, we would face it together. The days turned into weeks, and John and I fell into a new kind of normal. There was no rushing, no pressure to define what was happening between us, and that gave me a sense of comfort. I hadn't realized I needed our relationship. Once, purely familial had shifted into something deeper, something we both acknowledged but didn't force. We were just together, figuring it out as we went. But the story doesn't end here. John had this way of making everything feel easy. Our dates, as he called them, were simple walks through the park, late night, talks over a couple of beers, or sometimes just sitting in the living room, watching old movies and sharing quiet moments. The unspoken connection that had always been there between us grew stronger, and slowly but surely we let ourselves lean into it one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of pink and orange. I realized just how much everything had changed. We weren't the same people we had been before that night, when John had come into my room confessing feelings we both didn't fully understand. At the time, now sitting beside him, his hand resting lightly on mine, I felt a calm that I hadn't felt in years. Remember when we used to come out here after dinner? John asked, his voice breaking the comfortable silence between us. I smiled, nodding. You were just a kid back then. You always had a million questions about the stars. John laughed softly, squeezing my hand. I guess I've always been curious about things. There was something in the way he said it, something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a reminder of how far we had come, how much had changed between us, and how much more there was to explore as the sun dipped lower, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. John turned to me, his expression serious but tender. I've been thinking, he said, his voice quieter now, about us, about how this has been evolving. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt the familiar rush of nerves mixed with anticipation. Yeah? He nodded, his eyes searching mine. I know. We said we'd take things slow, and we have, but I don't want to keep holding back. I don't want to pretend like I don't already know how I feel about you. His words hung in the air, between us, heavy with meaning, and I felt my heart race in response. We had been dancing around this for weeks, allowing ourselves the space to adjust to the new dynamic between us. But John's words brought it all to the surface, laying everything bare. I don't want to hold back either, I admitted softly, my voice trembling slightly, but it's still complicated. John smiled, though it was tinged with a hint of sadness. I know it is, but it's also real. What we have, it's real. And I don't want to keep pretending that it's not. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. He was right. We couldn't keep tiptoeing around what was happening between us. The feelings were real, undeniable, and the connection we shared was something that had been building for a long time. But saying that out loud, admitting it fully, was something I hadn't yet done. I've never felt this way before. I whispered, my voice barely audible. Not like this. John's hand tightened around mine, his thumb brushing softly over my skin. Me neither. But that's why it's worth it, right? The sincerity in his eyes, the quiet conviction in his voice, made my chest tighten with emotion. There was no denying it anymore. I wanted this, wanted him in a way that transcended everything else. And for the first time, I felt ready to stop fighting it. Yeah, I said softly, my heart pounding in my chest. It is. John smiled. His eyes softened with relief, and before I could say anything else, he leaned in, pressing his lips to mine in a kiss that was slow and full of everything we hadn't said out loud. His hand moved to cup my face, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, letting the weight of the moment wash over me. There was no hesitation this time, no second guessing. The kiss deepened, and I felt his arms wrap around me, holding me close, as the world outside seemed to disappear. The warmth of his body against mine, the feel of his lips moving against mine, it was overwhelming. But in the best possible way, when we finally pulled apart, both of us, breathless, John rested his forehead against mine, his hand still gently cradling my face. "I love you." He whispered the words, slipping out so easily, so naturally, that I didn't even have time to process them before they hit me like a tidal wave. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a rush of emotion rise up inside me. It was the first time either of us had said it out loud, but I knew it was true. I had known for a while now, even if I hadn't let myself fully acknowledge it. But hearing him say it, hearing those words from his lips, made everything feel even more real. "I love you too." I whispered, my voice trembling with the weight of the words. John's smile was soft, full of warmth, and he kissed me again, this time, slower, more tender, as if savoring the moment, and I kissed him back, feeling the truth of those words settle into my chest, grounding me in a way that nothing else had. The days that followed were like something out of a dream. Everything felt lighter, easier, now that we had said what we had been holding back for so long. We didn't have to tiptoe around our feelings anymore. We didn't have to wonder or second guess. We were together, and that was all that mattered. We spent more time outside, walking through the fields or sitting by the lake, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We didn't need to. The connection between us spoke louder than words ever could. One evening, as we lay in bed, John curled up beside me, his head resting on my chest. I found myself thinking about the future. I didn't know what it would bring, didn't know how we would navigate the complexities of our relationship in the long run, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, I knew we would face it together. John stirred slightly, his hand sliding up to rest on my chest, and I looked down at him, feeling a surge of affection wash over me. He looked up at me, his eyes half closed, but there was a contentment there, a peace that I hadn't seen in him before. "I don't want this to ever end," he whispered, his voice soft but full of emotion. "It won't," I replied, my voice steady and certain. "We've got this." John smiled, his eyes fluttering closed, as he nestled closer to me, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. The world outside might not understand what we had, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that we had found something real, something worth holding on to, and I knew deep down that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together.